We're really honoured and delighted to be able to introduce our next couple of speakers. The first is our customer keynote presenter this morning, Mark Crawshaw from Superpartners. Mark is the Senior Manager for Channels and Integration Competency Centre at Superpartners, Australia's largest superannuation administrator. Mark is a technology leader in the fields of EAI, B2B and digital. He has a strong passion for utilising systems integration as a key business differentiator in the digital enterprise. Today, Mark is going to share with us his and Superpartners' journey into DevOps and Service Virtualisation. About 9 months ago, Mark introduced Service Virtualisation to Superpartners as a cost savings measure for a major program of work, but since then has learnt and discovered many more benefits. This presentation aims to share his experience and insights into how Service Virtualisation can deliver a step change in the efficient and effective delivery of software. Please join me in welcoming Mark to the stage.
I saw the future. The geeks were right.
Hello everyone. Today I'd like to talk a bit about Service Virtualisation and CA Lisa. So I work for a company based in Melbourne, and for those who don't know it, it's the largest superannuation service provider in Australia, looking after industry funds such as Australian Super, CBUS, HESTA, Host Plus and others. And we provide quality, low-cost administration, insurance and financial advice. We have over 157 billion in funds under management, 6 million members, and aim to make superannuation simple and convenient for over 1.2 million employers. We also have a very complex systems and change environment.
Sorry, Mark.
This is driven...
Just need to check your belt pack.
Where's
your belt pack?
Hello, testing.
For a second.
No worries. I think we're working. Hear me at the back? Yes. Cool. Sorry about that. So we have a very complicated systems environment, and this is driven from this business model, which really has a range of different clients of ours, like Australian Super and so on, with varying different, quite different business needs and a different sort of understanding of risk. So I'm based in Melbourne. I manage a team of designers, developers, and support staff. I have quite a technical background. I'm an ex-developer from not too many years ago. And I've really looked at the delivery of middleware, mobile and web solutions over my years. I've been drawn into environment and change management quite a bit, really based on necessity. But I've really enjoyed this work. I think it provides a lot of technical and also organisational challenges to solve. So in today's presentation, I want to provide some insight into the experiences of DevOps and Superpartners, and discuss a different path that we've been travelling over the past 2 years. Then I'd like to delve into some of the technology side and how a specific project around a middleware upgrade has had a lot of success for us. And then finally, talk a little bit about a CA product called Lisa and Service Virtualisation and how this has contributed to the effort. So these are a few of my not-so-favourite things. I don't believe they're specific to Superpartners, and in fact really occur in varying degrees across many organisations. The first is a different type of virtualisation, one that's caused a proliferation of very cheap non-production servers, but it really hasn't dealt with the cost and reliability of maintaining them. Secondly, we have a lot of groups involved in change, and when we integrate these, and often we integrate them late, we often deliver late. Thirdly, our legacy systems. They're expensive to build. They're often provisioned on very expensive non-standard hardware, and they become a very big and major bottleneck for our organisation. Tension. This is something I could probably do without. So you know, between projects, between SCM, between environment groups, it's quite a challenge. And we have, you know, like I think a lot of organisations, a lot of negative tension around trying to get things into production. And really, this has been built over time. Everyone makes mistakes, and we've certainly made our fair share. And then finally, really performance. We always strive to do well at performance testing, but in a lot of cases, the cost for us is so great in trying to do that and do that with a high level of quality. We really struggle to do it for all but the projects that have the money to do it. So why now? Why do we need to look into this now? What's the driver that's doing it? Is it cloud? Is it web? Is it digital? Is it the application economy? Well, yes, sure. I think it's all of these things, but in the end, we are now stuck with a changing expectation from our customers. Technologies that are slow, expensive, and unreliable to change really are big targets in today's competitive IT landscape. And really, we just don't need to keep going down this path. There's technology solutions and organisational solutions that are readily maturing, which solve many of the issues that we face today. So our journey started quite a long time ago, well before I arrived at Superpartners. And many smart individuals have attempted to improve delivery speed. There have been successes, but there have been just as many who have failed to make permanent improvement. When we look back at what worked versus what didn't, we really see two different paths. Improvements that were restricted to a single project, focused on a single point in time, and developed from one side of the change organisation. And others that had an enterprise view, were developed for the long term, and had broad consensus across the change organisation. When such a change path was followed, we see a lot of evidence that we had success there. So there's a little sort of set of things that we've put together to sort of think about how we work through these kind of speed to market improvements. The first is to characterise change. Not all change is the same. We have different technologies, different customers, different platforms that they run on. And so having a very broad discussion about resolving old change is quite difficult. So breaking it down is very important to us. Secondly, understanding risk. Gartner's PACE methodology is a very good argument that's come around in the last few years of why not all change is the same. Customers have a preference for a different risk profile and a different speed to market, and we should be listening to that. Setting a roadmap and gaining consensus. This is, and I repeat this a few times through the presentation, but really the most important thing for me. Automation does take time. It takes time to build these things. It does have some cost component. And so doing this where we bring others in from very early on into the design process. So bringing our SCM and environments teams, development groups together and talking from day one about how to change it. Not often what we do is developing something and then showing them once it's finished. And then really invest on value. The most common solution here is automation. Automation is a system in itself. It's expensive to manage over the long term. And if we don't need to, if we find, for example, that it is a bit slow to do something, but when we do it, it doesn't really happen that often, and we can do it quite successfully, and it rarely fails, well, maybe we don't need to consider automation. But things on the other side of that, where speed is very important, where it happens a lot and there's a lot of contention, which you should probably consider. So really there's two places to begin. And the first you might think is starting small and simple might be a pretty good go. So we didn't do that. We picked the most complex and biggest and most specialised system we could possibly find, and that is our middleware platform. It has 18 production servers, hundreds of non-production servers, 420 interfaces like get member information, update member information, so on. And it connects to 35 different end systems, our core systems, our channel systems, and so on. But what makes it a really good target for getting better is the fact that it has the highest rate of change in our environment by a long shot, and it also has the highest rate of contention between projects, between our clients, And so if anyone would ask what's the biggest challenge and change, it's always middleware, first of all. So how did we go about it? We used a business case that was part of a middleware platform upgrade, a big upgrade to our middleware. And we argued that by stepping up the speed and quality of change, we could recover costs just in the migration of code. So we were quite lucky in that we had this platform upgrade around to do it. And we also used our organisation strategy around integration and how it was very key to integrate providers and our clients, and how that was a very important strategy for our business. So this is a bit about how we did it. So I repeat again, we broke it down, we built the strategy, and we formalised consensus. You'll forget one person when we go through the strategy, and that's the person that will hit you, and the group that hits you when you try and get something through. But in the end, it is very key to use systems and automation as a basis, really, to get this to work. And really, for me, it ends up being a place where we can, for many groups, provide a point of understanding. Automation is more than saving someone a little bit of time during a manual build. When developed correctly, it empowers roles, doesn't needlessly restrict, builds trust, and teams can certainly allow their staff to focus on value-added items. So these are the few of the systems that we've built to handle this. First of all, metadata management. This records a very complicated state of our systems across many environments, including the location and version of every asset in our middleware platform, which at any point in time there would be thousands of different versions and assets sitting on hundreds of different servers. Automated build and deploy utilises this. It's a system in itself that allows us to manage many streams of development effort and control delivery and verification of assets to many environments. And then the automated testing and service virtualisation, that I'll delve into a little bit more detail here. But really, our goal at the end of all of this is to foster a culture of innovation and experiment through creating a safe work environment for our staff. So I'll dive just quickly into the metadata management automated build and show you a few screenshots of what we've developed there, and then we'll delve into the service virtualisation in a bit more detail. So here's a few screenshots from what we've built. This shows how we can verify deployment assets at any point in time. Testers can come in here, and if they've got a question about a developer that hasn't told them one build went in, but they don't really sort of believe them that it got there, and they can go and view this and see, and build trust up around this. Secondly, this shows how the columns across the top are different projects. They're all interacting with middleware platform, and which is really representing the systems and all the different systems and business units in our organisation. And we can see very quickly in the yellow there, for example, where two projects, someone has checked out some code, and two projects are trying to change the same artefact that relates to something we use for our SuperStream standards. Whereas many others there, for AWP, Australian Super Connections, a new, just one project called WM Upgrade on the right is using those, and that's safe. So it allows us to identify conflicts from projects very, very early and resolve them and pick a winner. Here we have a verification of a baseline, very important for understanding how close we are to production and the change set we put on top of that. Again, for the testers, they should be seeing green. This isn't a good example. But if it's all green in the environment that they've requested a deployment, then they know they've got production plus baseline. Here's the build monitor. Everyone uses this. All the yellow means that developers haven't been meeting the code quality standards, so there's quite a lot of that. We're still letting that through, but we'll probably have to start restricting that eventually. And finally, this is what the code quality tools look like, allowing to, automatically checking the quality of code and giving developers feedback before we allow builds out. So I don't think there's anything unusual in that. We all have got different systems that we've built to do this, but really, I guess the essence of why we've put a bit of effort into the design of the interfaces and how they look is really about trying to build trust and trying to get as many groups as possible around our IT organisation to trust these systems and to be able to then get on with value-added things rather than having questions about people's word and whether things have been done correctly or not. So let's talk now a little bit about service virtualisation. So our systems are getting more complex. There are many components managed by different teams and different companies. And so early component-based testing is becoming very, very critical to delivery. Now, it's always been possible to do this. There's mocking frameworks, there's lots of different tools we use in the development space. We can build replicas of systems using custom code. But really what we see changing in the industry and getting much more mature is the cost effectiveness of doing this with a high degree of quality. And so this is the example I showed you earlier about our middleware platform, some channel systems on the left-hand side, some core systems on the right. And what the toolset allows us to do is to record the traffic that's going as the channel systems call and as the core systems facilitate it, and then store that in a very smart way. We then can replace the channel systems with CA Lisa tests, and we can then replace the core systems with CA Lisa virtual services. So for our middleware upgrade, we're then able to run a baseline on our current integration platform, quickly replace out that with a new integration middleware platform with a bit of configuration, and run those same tests again. If it works, we're providing a lot of quality going into later manual testing cycles. And so really this, for us, is the essence of how we use virtualization and how we're starting to use it across the board. So what did we consider when we looked at service virtualization and a product set? So there are really a few tricks and enablers between a mature and a new product sets, and these are the four major requirements we had. The first is really entry into the game. You can't do very smart recording, understanding the transactions and how to parameterize them, how to understand multiple transactions and understand a conversation going on, and then play that back, then and also do that very cheaply, then you might as well be writing code, and the cost of that and maintaining that is very, very high. So this is number one for us. Secondly, broad protocol support. We have legacy systems, old versions of Oracle, and it's very important that we're able to support those protocols and virtualize them. Third is, it's complicated. Sometimes it's just not a synchronous call from a website coming back. There's multiple transactions and they work in a certain sequence. In order to test those is quite challenging. And so being able to correlate and have a thing that can manage those was very key to us. And finally, the management of scale and change. In the end, we would have virtualized and created replicas of every one of our end systems. At a point where we'll have to manage those ongoing. As the other systems change, we'll have to manage the virtual services. So managing that scale was really key, and why we selected the CA Lisa product. So how did we go about this? We ran a POC to understand the requirements that I just mentioned. Had a detailed selection process. We then had a 6-week value release that CA call it, where they came in and brought some of their great people in to get us going. And then we worked with RXP as the next presenter, who's an existing partner in our integration space and very well aligned in this area to sustain the IP growth internally. So how have we gone? So we're 8 months in so far with the virtualization product. We've written 150 test cases already, 40 virtual services, some which manage a few test cases. And really for us, virtualization has, there were a few questions when we started, and really virtualization has been as cost effective as we hoped, even for some of the legacy systems that so much of our integrations end up with. But most importantly, I believe we've turned the corner on delivery. Quality is significantly higher. We're hitting various delivery milestones. And one initiative which will accept contributions from a good proportion of the Australian population over the next couple of years has had its middleware code frozen 2 months before go live, which is, I haven't had experience doing that. It seems quite unusual in the organisations I've been in anyway. So here's a few screenshots of what the product looks like and how we've set this up. This is Australian Super. They actually host their own website with Deloitte and Melbourne IT. They don't use our internal sites. And this is a replica of all of the calls that come through from Australian Super. So with integration IDs down the left-hand side, which is how we maintain them all. And what they do is they schedule these runs every morning, so that no matter what's happened the night before with the non-production environments or what might have happened with the build, that they can be very confident going into the next test cycle before they start investing their people's time in it. Here is what we use for the contributions program for delivering this new MySuper legislation the government has committed to. The government was actually a little late on delivering some of the web services we needed to prove identity, to make sure we keep quality up with TFNs and the like. And so we were able to create a virtual service for the ATO very early in the project and allow our teams to just go on as if the ATO was there and it was provided when it was meant to be. Here's a bit about monitoring environments. This just shows you a few of the different servers that we'd have in green on the left-hand side, and uses a product called Pathfinder, which is part of the suite. It can actually look at all the traffic that's going on there, look at exceptions, look at JDBC calls, web service calls coming in, and that's where it has the ability to record and look at that sort of traffic. And then finally, this shows the area where for a simple web service comes in on the left-hand side and then goes into a database on the right, that how we can record a baseline on the left-hand side with that orange circle, and then virtualize on the left. It's really as simple as that. Once we find the transaction we're looking for, we're able to very quickly be able to capture that data. There's work to parameterize and get the data sets right and do that, but generally that's how we do it very, very quickly. So what weren't we expecting? Well, when we started this, I actually tried to restrict service virtualization down to just developers and to a single project initially. I tried to start simple and small. However, it didn't really work. The demand for its use across many projects has been really considerable, and especially in the testing practice, which has really led a lot of the innovation in this area. Diagnosis, so the screens I showed you before, this has become really critical. In managed environments that are very locked down by our environments group, as we go into production, our ability to try and diagnose issues is really, really challenging. But this tool set allows us to see what's happening and very quickly isolate where the failures lie. And there's been some very challenging moments, hours before cut-off, and our main SME that works on service virtualization has saved us one more times than I can remember. And finally, environment verification. The trust around building environments and getting them to a good state before cycles start is really challenging. And so having really broad-based virtualization, broad-based tests, we can see significantly improving that and providing that confidence for the testers before they move into manual cycles. So these are the things that we certainly understood what we were going to do with our upgrade project, but these are the sort of things that came out a little left of field. So some tips that I hope to share and hope might be useful is that in the end, people are just as important as technology in this DevOps philosophy. Step back, gain consensus on a way forward, and then collaborate throughout. The solution might not end up being the most efficient, might not be exactly how you envisage it, but in the end, people will use it. Secondly, if DevOps is designed to enable continuous delivery, then it makes a lot of sense to invest it on a continuing basis and keep getting better at quality. And so it's very important to get the financial models right around that. Virtualization really should be managed, hopefully as close as possible to the management of the end systems. If these systems aren't kept up to date, the virtualization systems aren't kept up to date, then it's very challenging to keep the trust over time. And finally, it is all about trust, looking from the previous presenter. And so managing the organisational change and marketing heavily is very important to uptake as well. So couple more things. The first thing is, what do we really see if we, over the next few years, if we push the envelope, what could we do? Well, testing is all about trust again, so manual testing I think will always occur. But there are certainly circumstances where change with very low risk, we might just use automated testing, maybe server patching and things like that. However, the big savings for today are in the reduction of defects before manual testing. Performance was previously cost prohibitive, so we hope to really ramp up the scope around these virtual services and provide excellent performance testing for every change that we make. Environments, again, in certifying environments and having a very broad set of services that allow and enforce the certification through these tests and virtual services before any environment goes out. And finally, recording real production traffic. There's tool sets that can do this. I know of a CA1 as well. But this could really open up the possibility of doing parallel runs and doing very, very accurate to production-like testing in the future. So this is one more thing. So it doesn't really relate to service virtualization, but as a result of our ability to freeze code, 2 months before go live for this major initiative, we're able to realise some stretch goals. And so this is an early mock-up of a real-time dashboard that is scheduled for release in October, and it provides our executive management with true insight to one of our most important business processes. I'd like to thank you for your time.